Welcome! Have you ever stopped to think about how you make sense of the world? Well, that simple question really gets to the heart of what a worldview is all about. And in this explainer, we're going to break down this huge concept together in both English and Mandarin. So here's our game plan for today. First, we'll kick things off with the essential building blocks, some core vocabulary. Then we'll see how those words pop up in a key verse. After that, we're going to compare two very different ways of seeing the world, get some hands-on practice, and finally, talk about how you can make all of this your own. All right, let's dive right into Section 1, Core Words for Your Worldview, or 核心词汇. Seriously, these 7 words are the foundation for everything else we're going to talk about today. Okay, let's really dig into these words. Getting these down will make everything else so much clearer. First up, worldview. In Chinese, that's 世界观, as in, everyone has a worldview. 每个人都有世界观. Next, we have truth, 真理. For example, God is the source of truth. 神是真理的来源. Then there's authority, 权柄. A good sentence is, God's authority is highest. 神的权柄最高. Our next word is belief, 信念. You could say, my belief is in God. 我的信念在神. Now for a tricky one, neutral, 中立. Think about this sentence. No one is truly neutral. 没有人完全中立. Then we have choice, 选择. Super common word, right? We make choices every day. 我们每天都做选择. And finally, obey, 顺服. For example, a wise person obeys God. 智慧人顺服神. Okay, so now that we've got those core words in our back pocket, let's see how they connect to a really powerful idea in our next section, a verse to remember, or 圣经经文. This verse from Colossians is a real cornerstone for our discussion today. Why? Because it talks directly about the different philosophies or worldviews that can shape how we think. Let me read it for you in English. See to it that no one takes you captive by philosophy and empty deceit, according to the traditions of men, according to the basic principles of the world, and not according to Christ. Now, let's hear that exact same thought, but this time in Mandarin Chinese. Listen for that same sense of warning. 你们要谨慎，免得有人用哲学和虚空的迷惑把你们录取，照着世人的传说和世上的基本原则，不照着基督。You know, hearing both versions can be a fantastic way to really help this idea stick in your memory. All right, we've arrived at the very heart of our topic. Section 3, two ways of seeing, or 两种看法. Here we're going to really define what a worldview is and look at 2 totally different examples. So, to get us started, just take a moment and think about this question right here. What kind of questions does a worldview actually answer? A worldview is basically the lens that you look through to answer life's biggest questions. It's the whole framework you use to understand these fundamental things, like who is God? What even is truth? How do we know what's right and what's wrong? And the big one, what is the meaning of life? It's really your foundational belief system. This slide lays it out so clearly. You can see how different starting points create completely different worldviews. Over on the left, the Christian worldview kicks off with God as the foundational reality. From this view, wisdom means following God's truth. Then on the right, you have the atheist worldview, which starts from the position that there is no God. From this perspective, the source material defines a fool as one who rejects God's truth. The key takeaway here is just how much that one initial belief about God shapes absolutely everything that follows. So now that we've seen the theory behind how worldviews are built, let's actually put these ideas into practice. Welcome to Section 4. Let's practice together, or 一起练习. This is where you get to jump in and start using what we've been talking about. We've got some fantastic sentence frames here to help you start putting your own worldview into words. Let's look at the first one. My worldview is blank because blank. An example could be, my worldview is Christian because I believe in God. In Mandarin, that would be, 我的世界观是基督徒的，因为我信靠神. Now for the second frame, a Christian follows blank because blank. For example, a Christian follows God's truth because God is wise. And in Mandarin, 基督徒遵循神的真理，因为神是智慧的. I really encourage you, pause here and try to create your own sentences with these. Okay, let's practice with a quick little dialogue. I'll read both parts so you can get a feel for the flow. Speaker A asks, what is a worldview? Speaker B answers, a worldview answers questions about God, truth, and life. Speaker A, who follows God's truth? Speaker B, a wise person follows God's truth. Speaker A, who rejects God's truth? Speaker B, A fool rejects God's truth. I definitely recommend trying to read this out loud yourself. It's a great way to get comfortable with the words and ideas. That was some great practice. Now it's time for section 5, test your understanding, or 测试理解. Think of this as a fun, low-pressure way to check in and see how we're doing. On this slide, we've got a little worldview sorting activity. All you have to do is read each statement, decide if it fits better with a Christian worldview, that's C, or an atheist worldview, A, and then think about why. Let's do the first one together, okay? The statement is, God is the creator of all. Well, that one clearly starts with God, so we'd mark it C. And the why? Because it identifies God as the ultimate source, the ultimate authority. Simple as that. I'll give you a moment to think through the other ones on the screen. Okay, let's try a real-life scenario. Imagine you're talking to a friend and they say, truth is just a personal opinion. What's true for you isn't true for me. Based on everything we've talked about, what kind of worldview might that statement point to and why? Just think back to our definitions. Is that a view where truth is objective and comes from a higher authority? Or is it more subjective, where every person just creates their own? This is a perfect example of how these big ideas show up in everyday conversations. Wow, we have covered a lot of ground together. Now, let's head into our final section. Section 6, make it your own, or 个人应用. This is where we really shift from just understanding these concepts to actually applying them to our own lives. To really make sure all of this sticks, here are 3 simple tasks you can do. First, write 3 of your own sentences using those frames we practiced earlier. Second, challenge yourself to memorize Colossians 2:8 in both English and Chinese. And finally, grab a piece of paper and draw a super simple chart that shows the flow, God at the top, leading to truth, which then guides how you live your life. Taking these steps will really help solidify everything we've learned. And that brings us to our final thought for today. Your worldview isn't just some academic idea, it's the actual lens you use to see and interpret everything in your life. So, the question I want to leave you with is this: what do you see?